Traders, how are you? Marcello, founder of the Day Trading Academy. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. Overall this week, we had the majority of companies reporting their fourth quarter earnings. So I'm going to go ahead. I've actually been thinking about doing a separate video. I want to get you guys' opinion on this since you guys give me a lot of feedback on the video, to be able to do a separate video just on the quarter four information, you know, the economy, companies, all that stuff, instead of trying to kind of push it into the recap that I do for you guys every week. So let me know about that. The overall arching idea for this week, again, was the coronavirus. There was a lot of good economic news, which allowed the stocks to skyrocket. Tesla is on an absolute tear before the crash. Just like I predicted the crash of Bitcoin right before it happened in December, you can kind of see the same behavior on the Tesla chart. Anytime something goes parabolic like that, where it just literally, you know, starts to go up and then it just goes parabolic, where it literally goes straight up. My way to kind of phrase that is they're taking the cows to slaughter. That's when all the little guys, the retail traders, right, you and I, they're all jumping in at the last second because it's the promise of easy money, which obviously doesn't exist. And that's when it literally crashes. And that's what happened with Tesla as well, since it crashed quite a bit. On Monday, the U.S. stocks are higher, more than anything gains in the big tech shares. There was also a surprise strength in the U.S. manufacturing activity. Tuesday morning, we had the U.S. stock futures surge 1% higher, signaling a market recovery with more intervention in China central bank, putting money into the financial markets to be able to save the day. On Tuesday, we had a NASDAQ record high, and China actually injected $242.7 billion into their financial system. On Wednesday, the S&P 500 and NASDAQ hit a record high. U.S. stocks rallied for a third straight day on encouraging U.S. economic data. Remember that now all the data is coming out from the fourth quarter. Companies, economic news from countries, all that stuff is now starting to kind of seep out, even though the majority has kind of already been reported. And now, because of that news, most people aren't as worried about the coronavirus, even though I do think it's going to get worse before it gets better. If you guys want me to talk a little bit about that, let me know in the comments, whether it's here on YouTube or on Instagram, Marcello Arrambide English, or the podcast. If you guys don't know, you guys can listen to the recaps that I do. The other videos I'm going to be doing, I'll make sure to put them on the podcast as well so you guys can see that. Other than that, on Thursday, all the main indexes in the U.S. hit record highs, a lot of growing confidence in China's efforts. Even Trump made a few tweets and stated that they had the situation under control. Contain economic fallout from the coronavirus outbreak, which, as I mentioned to you guys before, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And the S&P 500 wrapped up its best week in 8 months. For the week, the Dow went up 2.96%, the S&P 500 went up 3.12%, and the NASDAQ went up 4.04%. The U.S. stock market, since Trump was elected president in 2016, has added $12 trillion in market valuation. It's amazing. Overseas market news. Monday had a huge sell-off in China due to the coronavirus. It wiped out nearly $500 billion of the valuation of the country's largest companies. There's been extensive business closures in China. Expect dramatically lower earnings, and also an expectation of a different kind of expectation of the numbers of the economy for China and the world as well. If you guys remember from last week, I reported that the rail traffic is down 40%, over 40%. The air traffic is down over 40%, and road traffic is down over 20%. So it's definitely literally the amount of people that are quarantined or literally shut down in cities in China is bigger than the population of the United States. So this is definitely going to take a hit worldwide. European markets are far higher. Italy went up 5.34%. Latin America, the Merval in Argentina was the biggest winner at 2.76%. And Africa and the Middle Eastern markets, Nigeria went down 2.76%. And then in the Far East, the biggest winner was the Kospi in South Korea at 4.38%. And the Chinese market obviously was the biggest loser at 3.51% negative. For all the traders in the Philippines, the Filipino market went up 4.24%. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrency news, the U.S. Fed Reserve, as I predicted, is looking at a broad range of issues around regulations and protections, including digital payments and currencies. They're also looking for the potential benefits and costs around issuing their own digital currency. And world central banks now are looking to do this due to the fact that they saw what Facebook was going to do. And as I let you guys know, they're not going to permit Facebook to control the money supply. And it's like I've always said, Bitcoin and cryptos, they'll exist, they'll go up and down, but all the stuff that people say about it being the next financial system, there's no way the government is going to release control of the financial system and just give it to a third party. So now you guys can see, as I mentioned, something that was a possibility, what's going to happen now when maybe the government says you can only use government coin, you can't use Bitcoin, or whatever the case may be. See what I mean? It was always about the blockchain, the technology that they use in Bitcoin, not Bitcoin itself. Other than that, the leaders of 6 major central banks are doing the joint research on the cryptos, and they're going to have supposedly their first meeting in Washington in mid-April. For the week, Bitcoin went up 4.79% to 9,797. Financial and banking news, the People's Bank of China is going to inject tens of billions of dollars into the Chinese markets to be able to keep the cash flowing during the crisis and also try to protect the financial markets and the economy as it remains a top priority of the government. EU leaders are beginning to start the week with a very difficult job to be able to go ahead and define the budget for the next 7 years here in 2020. It's going to be a very big challenge because now they have to fill a €9 billion hole because now Brexit is not supporting to the budget for the EU. So now they have to come up with that money because they were one of the largest contributors to the budget. And for those of you guys in the UK, short term, I don't think it'll necessarily be a good thing. It's probably a bad thing short term for you guys to be out of the euro, but it's a very, very good thing long term because one, you guys just saved $9 billion that you're not going to invest in your own country rather than giving it to the bureaucrats in Europe. Commodities, the crude oil went down 2.18% this week. International called Brent went down 6.62%. And Thursday, prices are down 5.8% for the week. So far, they're down 20.7% for the year. Chinese oil demand dipped by 3 million barrels per day, or about 20% of the consumption, due to the coronavirus. As I mentioned to you guys, everything has practically been shut down, and it's the largest demand shock since the global financial crisis and the most sudden since the 9/11 attacks on the United States. Russia later supported the cut that OPEC was going to do. In the beginning, they didn't want to support it, so there must have been some kind of agreement there between them, probably Saudi Arabia. They decided to cut about 600,000 barrels per day, 0.6% of the global supply. And remember that China now is the biggest consumer of oil in the world. They used to be United States. U.S. authorities have accused 6 J.P. Morgan employees of rigging precious metals in the futures markets. They're now building a federal case against the bank due to market manipulation and spoofing. If you guys don't know what spoofing is, I can definitely explain it to you, so let me know there in the comments. I can do a video about that for you. And that's going to raise the prospect of fines for the U.S. bank. It's what I told you guys already. All of the markets are manipulated, some more than others. That's why I don't recommend markets like Forex and binary options for beginner traders, due to the fact that those markets are much more manipulated than others, like futures and stocks, for example, which is what I recommend for beginners. But they already charged the bank traders who worked in New York, London, and Singapore for manipulating thousands of orders in silver and gold futures to benefit the bank and, surprise, major hedge funds. Like they don't have enough money already. Precious metals are mixed for the week. Gold is down 1.14%. Silver is down 1.91%. Don't forget to leave all your questions with the hashtag AskMarcello, and I can also go ahead and advise you guys to subscribe to the channel, obviously, right? And remember, we do have the podcast, so if you want to go to iTunes or anywhere else, if you guys can't find it, just leave me a comment here. I'll make sure that I submit it where you guys are looking for it if you can't find it. Remember that on Wednesday, President Trump was acquitted of the 2 charges that was against them. Romney, the only Republican that voted against him. Then now that's obviously personal between Trump and Romney. He did vote in favor of the second charge, so he voted against Trump on one, voted with him against the other, but he was eventually acquitted of all charges on Wednesday. It was mostly along partisan lines too. All the Democrats, what that means if you guys don't know, all the Democrats voted against him, all the Republicans voted for him. So, 4 acquitting, and then, Democrats winning them charged. And remember, on these videos, I'm always going to stay neutral. I never want to get political. I think most of us are tired already of all the politics and everybody fighting and yelling at each other. So I try to do these videos to have you guys learn, get caught up on what's going on in the week. So I just want to remind you guys of that. So it doesn't matter if you love or hate Trump, love or hate Obama, left, right, purple, green, black, doesn't matter. Just want to try to have you guys informed and learn about what's going on with everything. In economic news, on Monday, more than a dozen Chinese provinces announced the extension of the Lunar New Year holiday by more than a week to try to attempt to stop the spread of the coronavirus. That accounts for almost 69% of China's GDP. Economists now are expecting a severe blow to the economy, much bigger than SARS, which happened quite a few years ago. New orders for U.S.-made goods increased by most in nearly 18 months in December. There was a strong demand for defense aircraft, but weak business spending on equipment, and also shows the limited scope of the rebound in domestic manufacturing, which is what Trump wanted. Americans filing for unemployment dips to a 9-month low. It decreased 15,000 to about 202,000, the lowest reading since April. And the U.S. also added 225,000 jobs. Declining trade tensions helped boost the labor market beyond projections, and the employment rate is just a little bit higher, about 3.6% of the labor force. Participation rate rose by 2.2% to 63.4%. Other than that, in corporate news, Uber, it's ending its operations in Colombia after it failed to win reprieve from the government on a ruling against the country. This is all about politics, right? Because here in Colombia, this is where we're at right now, by the way. Well, there's a company called Didi, which is the Chinese Uber, and then another company called Beat, which is the Greece Uber. And they're both here working, and now Didi's literally scooping up all the market share. So it's funny how they ban one company but not the others. Must have put with the right people. Other than that, Tesla stock surged 300% since early June, fueled by the quarterly profit, according to accounting standards. Their Panasonic battery business with the U.S. car maker went well as well, and the investor report predicting his shares are going to rise tenfold by 2024. Ford took a huge hit in profit. It was a huge hit, and now their shares fell by 10% on Wednesday after forecasting an even lower profit in 2020 after the huge drop in profit in 2019 for them. Revenue and profit at Disney, the film division, rose year over year by $3.7 billion, even though that they are going to have to close the theme parks that they have in Hong Kong and also mainland China and Shanghai. Those cutting off could cut off about $175 million worth of revenue if they're extended for 2 months. Adidas, which is the sneaker company, which is German if you guys didn't know, is closing stores in China as well, they're probably going to take a hit as well. Trade news, the EU and the UK already clashing over a post-Brexit trade deal. The two sides are setting out very different ideas of what they want, and in typical European fashion, it's going to be long, complicated, and they just will always want things to go their way, basically. And we'll go tit for tat here for a while too, eventually, since there's some kind of deal. Guarantee you the US will probably make a deal with the UK faster than the EU does. The U.S. trade deficit dips for the first time in 6 years in 2019. It fell by 1.7% to almost $617 billion. The Trump trade war with China curbed the import bill and helped the economy to continue growing moderately in quarter four, despite the slowdown in consumer spending. Remember, consumer spending is the most important thing in the U.S. economy. It's almost 70%. That's why they're doing not quantitative easing, right? The Fed doesn't print money and put it in the financial markets, because if they do that, then the stocks go up, everybody feels rich, and then they go out and spend money, which helps the economy move more, because that's what 70% of is consumer spending. Technology UK is planning to ban the sale of new petrol and diesel cars by 2035 to reduce air pollution, helping shift toward electric cars. And they're also reporting that the tipping point of cost when it comes to the batteries and other things of electric cars should come to parity between about 2020 and 2030, or about 2025 or so is what they're saying. So now they're saying that about in 2025 there wouldn't have to be subsidies and all these other kinds of things, because electric cars should have the same cost or lower than internal combustion cars, gas cars. In investment news, Disney Plus is now reporting that they've reached 28.6 million paying subscribers in just 3 months, when they reported in November that they had 10 million people sign up. And the popular series on Disney Plus called The Mandalorian is going to return in October as well. And in international events, shooters killed 9 people, including 12-year-old boy and 4 teens in the central state of Michoacan in central Mexico, as part of the sweeping violence going through the country's avocado heartland. It's a sad thing. They voted the president AMLO is what they call him, President Obrador is his name, and due to people being hesitant of the policies that he has, because crime has increased. It's one of the only countries last year to actually contract economically by 0.1%, while a lot of the other economies in Latin America are actually growing. Goes to show, he's on the his policies, let's say, I don't want to get political and give my opinion. His policies obviously are scaring investors. So they're fleeing from the country, and that affected that as well, including the rise in crime. And the unusual facts this week: Australia's wildfire in the east and south killed millions of bees and destroyed vast tracts of forests. And that obviously affected a lot of insects and other animals as well. It's going to put the country's multi-billion-dollar horticulture industry at risk. We're talking about just agriculture. If you guys don't know what that means, almonds, apples, cherries, pears, honey are all at risk. Australia is actually the second largest producer of almonds in the world, right behind the United States. And now, after grappling with all the drought that they had over the few years, now they're grappling with this as well. And although Colombia has no confirmed cases of the coronavirus, this is the first country in Latin America that can actually test for the virus. They've tested 50 people so far just in case. And other countries, since they don't have the capacity to be able to test for the virus, have to send the blood samples to the U.S. to be tested and get it sent back. Other than that, Switzerland has been ranked the highest cost of living in the world, according to Business Magazine CEO World. It was a study of 132 countries measuring the price of goods and services, including housing, groceries, clothes, utilities, eating out, and taxi fares. Denmark and Luxembourg are also in Europe, which are very high cost of living. The top 10 are Japan, Bahamas, Israel, Singapore, and also South Korea are included in those top 10. The United States was 20th and the UK was 27th. US FBI Director Christopher Wray said on Thursday that China is seeking to steal US tech by any means necessary. And the law enforcement agency is saying that they have over 1,000 investigations open into the Chinese technology theft. He's saying that the attack by China to steal US technology is diverse and multi-layered. And U.S. Attorney General Barr said, which is very unusual to do, but he said that the United States and allies should consider taking a controlling stake in Finland's Nokia and Sweden's Ericsson to be able to compete against the Huawei domination of 5G technology. He said that both of the companies have a market cap of about $50 billion and not clear where the government could potentially get the money or if foreign regulators would approve the move, but it would be a way to be able to do that. So let me know about the Q4, guys. I'll do that video for you if you guys want. More than 70% of the companies have actually topped estimates in Q4 so far. Other than that, I got a bunch of news from Q4 if you guys want to hear it. So let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe, #AskMarcello. We'll see you next week.